this is 4-3, rate of change and slope. Rate of change and slope are essentially the same thing. A rate of change tells on average how a quantity is changing over time. So the formula that we use for rate of change is change in y over the change in x. A symbol that we use in science class is delta y over delta x. Delta means change in y over change in x. So that you don't have to write out the words of the formula every time, you can just write delta y over delta x. Okay, example 1. The table to the right shows the balance of a bank account on different days of the month. Find the rate of change for each time interval. During which time interval did the balance decrease at the greatest rate? So the time intervals that we're talking about here are days 1 through 6. Then we have day 6 to 16. Days 16 through 22. And days 22 through 30. So we should have 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now with that we're going to do change in y over the change in x. So how much did the y change? Well, it went from 550 to 285. So it dropped 550 to 285. So it dropped 265 over, and the x value went from 1 to 6. Well, that's an increase of 5. So it went 265 over 5. And that can be simplified to negative 53. Okay, from 6 to 16, our change in y, well, we went from 285 to 210. We dropped 75 over our change in x. 6 to 16, we increased 10, so positive 10. And negative 75 over 10 is negative 7.5. Okay, and then from 210 to 210 on the next one for change in y, that would be 0 over the change in x. It actually doesn't even matter what the change in x is, because 0 on top in the numerator, 0 over any number is going to be 0. And then from 16 to 22, we increase 6 for the change in x. But again, it doesn't matter. 0 divided by 6, if you put that in your calculator, equals 0. Okay, and then our last one from interval 22 to 30, we have change in y over the change in x. Well, the change in y going from 210 to 175. It's down 35. Over from 22 to 30 is over 8. Increasing by 8, and that equals negative 35 divided by 8 is negative 4.375. You could round that if we wanted to. So during which time interval did the balance decrease at the greatest rate? Well, it decreased at the greatest rate right here, negative 53. So to answer the question, during which time interval did the balance decrease? It would be the interval 1 through 6. So days 1 through 6 had the greatest balance decrease. Okay, now we have to graph this data. So on day 1, it was around 550. On day 6, it was around 285. You can already see a big drop here. And this graph's not going to be perfect, but I'm really not perfect. I'm not even on the right line. So I'm going to pause this and continue graphing so you can see the big drop. So if I connect these just so you can see here, the part where it drops the most is in that first interval. Day 1 to day 6. Find the rates of change for 1930 to 1960 and 1990 to 2000. So the change in y is 5.4 minus 8.1. Change in x is 1930 minus 1960. That equals 0.09. You can also think of this as a percent. To get a percent, you move 2 spaces to the right, so that would be 9%. Let's look at 1990 to 2000, so change in y over change in x. So 1990 to 2000. 12.2 minus 15.6 over 1990 minus 2000. And this gets us 0.34. Two spaces to the right, we can think of this as a percent, 34%. So it says explain the meaning of the rate of change in each case. So what did we actually find here? So during the first time interval, 1930 to 1960, there was a 9% increase of people per square mile. And from 1990 to 2000, there was those quotes are repeating, 34% increase of people per square mile. Okay, slope of a line. Slope represents the rise over run, or we have a slope formula as shown on the right here, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So it's just like rate of change, which was change in y up top over change in x. We have four different types of slopes. We have a positive slope where the line increases from left to right. We have a negative slope where the line decreases from left to right. We have a zero slope, which is a horizontal line, and a vertical line of an undefined slope. There's a couple things I want you to know about this. If you were skiing on this slope right here, you'd be going uphill. For a negative slope, you'd be skiing downhill. For a zero slope, if you were standing on a slope like this trying to ski, you'd be going 0 miles per hour. So that's how you can remember this one. And this slope right here, if you were skiing on this is worse than a double black diamond. If you were skiing on this, you would not know the result. It would be an undefined result of what's going to possibly happen to you. And another thing that I want you to realize, if you have 0 over a number, like 0 over 2 for instance, this equals 0. But it's confused with people confuse, when they get 2 over 0. 2 divided by 0 is undefined. If you try to do this in your calculator, you'll get syntax error. Take a number and divide by 0. You can't do it. And so what I'd like to remind people of is this is the head of the person skiing. 0 over a number. So they're skiing along a slope like this. That's a 0 slope. When someone's skiing along this undefined slope, look at where their head ends up at the bottom. They flip over, and this is what they look like, so it's undefined. Just a little way to remember it. Okay, find the slope of the line that passes through these points. So we're going to label these points x1, y1, and x2, y2. This is the first x that I see, and the first y I see. This is the second x I see, and the second y I see. And then from there, we're just going to follow the slope formula. Not x on top. Don't do that, what I was just about to do. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm going to plug in my values. So my y2 was 2 minus my y1 is 1 over x2 is 2 minus my x1, which is a negative 1. And then be careful of this double negative. Your calculator will take care of that for you. But it actually becomes a plus. And so 2 minus 1 is 1, and 2 plus 1 is 3. And so this has a slope of 1/3. So let me show you what that looks like on the graph. If we graph negative 1, 1, that's negative 1, 1. And we graph 2, 2, 2, 2. And we look at our slope. First of all, this is a positive number. So my slope should be positive. That's one thing to check. It's going uphill, so that's good. And then more specifically, I want you to see that it's going up. If I count up, I'm going up 1 space. I'm rising 1. That's my rise of 1. And I'm running 1, 2, 3. So if we go back to our answer that I wrote down here, where I got 1 over 3. That was my rise and my run. You can't get any slope questions incorrect if you're checking your work, and everybody should be checking their work. So let's look at the next one. I'm going to start with my formula, m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to plug in my values, 1 minus 3 over 4 minus 1. Well, 1 minus 3 is negative 2, 4 minus 1 is 3, and so I should get negative 2/3. Let me graph this, 1, 3, and 4, 1. Look at my slope. It's a downhill slope. And my number was negative that I got from my answer, so that's a good start. And then let's double check. We're going to count. So I'm going down 1, 2. This says down 2, that negative 2, down 2. And positive 3 should be to the right 3. 1, 2, 3. And I went to the right 3. So even my rise over run came out correct. So I know my slope is correct. Next one, same thing, slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 6 minus 6 over 4 minus negative 3. Double negative right there. That's going to change to a plus. Well, 6 minus 6 is 0 over, doesn't even matter what it's over, but it comes out as 7. Remember, this is where the person's head is on top. This is a 0 slope. It should look like a flat line. So let's take a look at that. Negative 3, 6, and 4, 6. So if I had just graphed this, I would know right away that this slope, m equals 0. 0 mile per hour is when skiing on that. Okay, same thing again. So slope formula, m equals y2 minus y1. Notice I write the formula every single time. 2 minus 2 over 3 minus negative 1. 2 minus 2, I already have 0, so I don't even care what the bottom is. 0 over 4, I know equals 0. Let's graph and double check. Negative 1, 2, and 3, 2. A slope of 0. Horizontal line. Let's look at example B. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which equals negative 2 minus 4 over 3 minus 3. The negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. My 0 is on the bottom. That is not a good situation. That's undefined. Again, if you try to do negative 6 divided by 0 in your calculator, you'll probably get syntax error or an error of some kind. Let's see, 3, 4, I'm going to graph this. And 3, negative 2. Look at this line. This is an undefined slope. I would not want to be skiing on that.